Welcome back to Hopeful Horizon, where stories of hope, resilience, and transformation come to life. Today's tale delves deep into the fight for justice and the power of standing up for what's right. It's a story that will make you question, reflect, and believe in the change we can all inspire. In a bustling city where divisions run deep, a wrongful arrest becomes the catalyst for a movement that transforms not just a community, but hearts and minds. Stay with us as we follow the journey of Jamal West, a man caught in the crosshairs of prejudice, and how one moment ignited a call for justice. If you love stories that stir the soul and inspire change, don't forget to comment below. Tell us where you're listening from and join the conversation. And be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an inspiring story from Hopeful Horizon. The city of Clarion had long been a place of contradictions. On the surface, it was a thriving metropolis with glass skyscrapers reflecting the sky and bustling streets filled with life. People from all walks of life lived here, from the working-class neighborhoods to the more affluent areas of town, each side of the city telling a different story. But beneath the surface, tensions had been simmering for years, a tension born out of racial divides, economic disparities, and years of unaddressed grievances. It was a warm, humid summer afternoon when Jamal West found himself driving through the heart of downtown Clarion. Jamal wasn't just anyone. He was a man of distinction, a civil rights lawyer with a passion for justice. He had spent years defending those who had been silenced, working tirelessly to fight systemic injustice. His tall, lean frame carried the weight of countless battles in courtrooms where justice was often hard to find, and his sharp mind and eloquent voice had earned him a reputation as a relentless advocate. But today, Jamal wasn't in court or at a community rally. He was simply driving home after a long day. The city hummed with its usual energy as Jamal drove past crowded sidewalks, where street vendors sold everything from hot dogs to local crafts, and pedestrians hurried past in their daily routines. The rhythm of the city was familiar, comforting even, as Jamal navigated the winding streets of downtown. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a golden hue over the buildings, Jamal's thoughts drifted. He had just wrapped up a case involving police misconduct, a victory that had brought some measure of justice to a grieving family. But it was a bittersweet victory, one that left him reflecting on the long road ahead in the fight for true equality. Jamal's phone buzzed, snapping him out of his thoughts. Glancing at the screen, he saw it was a message from his wife, Naomi. Naomi was his anchor, strong, compassionate, and equally driven in her career as a social worker. She worked with families affected by poverty and violence, offering support and hope where there often seemed to be none. Together, they were a formidable team, bonded not only by their love for each other, but by their shared commitment to making the world a better place. "Hey babe, don't forget to pick up dinner on your way home," the message read. Jamal smiled, texting back quickly. Just as he was about to turn onto the highway leading to his neighborhood, he noticed the flashing lights of a police car behind him. At first, he thought nothing of it. He wasn't speeding, and his car was in perfect condition. But the lights didn't fade away. They stayed fixed behind him, and soon the blaring of the siren followed. With a sigh, Jamal pulled over, his lawyer's instinct already kicking in. He knew the routine. As a black man in America, he had been pulled over enough times to recognize when something wasn't right. The officers approached his car slowly. One was a tall, broad-shouldered man with a stern expression, Officer Riley. The other, Officer Jenkins, was shorter, with a permanent scowl etched on his face. Both men had their hands resting on their belts, just a little too close to their weapons for comfort. "License and registration," Officer Riley said curtly, his voice void of the usual politeness Jamal had come to expect from law enforcement. Jamal calmly handed over his documents, his expression neutral, but his mind already working. "Is there a reason I'm being stopped, officers?" Jamal asked, keeping his tone measured. Officer Jenkins didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked over the car, his eyes narrowing as if searching for something to justify the stop. "Just a routine check," Jenkins muttered, but there was something in his tone that set off alarm bells in Jamal's mind. Routine checks didn't typically involve this level of scrutiny. As the moments stretched on, Jamal felt the tension rise. Riley stepped away to run his license, while Jenkins remained by the car, watching Jamal like a hawk. Jamal's fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel as he glanced in the rearview mirror. What was taking so long? Suddenly, Riley returned, and this time, his expression had changed. He looked almost smug. "Step out of the vehicle," Riley ordered. Jamal's heart rate quickened. This wasn't right. There was no reason for him to be asked to step out, no probable cause. He knew the law inside and out, and nothing about this stop was following protocol. "May I ask why?" Jamal kept his voice calm, though his mind was racing. "You've got a warrant out for your arrest," Riley said, his tone dripping with satisfaction. "A warrant?" Jamal's confusion deepened. There had to be a mistake. He hadn't done anything wrong, and he certainly didn't have any warrants. But before he could protest, Jenkins was opening the car door, pulling Jamal out with little regard for his rights. "Hey, this is unnecessary," Jamal said, his lawyer's voice now fully engaged. "I'm a civil rights attorney. Whatever you think this is, I can assure you." "Save it for the judge," Riley snapped, slapping the cuffs onto Jamal's wrists. The metallic click of the cuffs echoed in Jamal's ears as his world seemed to tilt on its axis. He was being arrested, and for what? As the officers pushed him into the back of the patrol car, Jamal's mind raced. This wasn't just an ordinary arrest. This was something bigger. And as they drove away from the scene, Jamal realized that this incident was about to set off a chain of events that would change everything. The ride to the station was eerily quiet, except for the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the police radio. Jamal sat in the back seat, his hands cuffed behind his back, eyes fixed out the window as the city blurred by. He could feel the weight of every mile. How many clients had he defended in situations just like this? Innocent people, wrongfully accused, victims of profiling and systemic bias. But now, it was happening to him, and the bitter irony wasn't lost on him. The patrol car pulled into the Clarion Police Department, a building Jamal knew all too well, having spent countless hours there fighting for justice. Today, though, he entered through the side door, escorted by officers Riley and Jenkins, as if he were a criminal. The station was bustling with activity, phones ringing, officers moving in and out, suspects being booked. But as Jamal stepped inside, he noticed something. Eyes followed him. Several officers glanced up from their desks, whispering to one another, eyebrows raised. This wasn't the usual suspect being brought in. Jamal West was well known in legal circles, not just for his cases, but for his reputation as a federal investigator. He was taken to a holding cell, its cold steel bars and dim fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the upscale office he was used to working in. As he sat on the metal bench, the weight of his situation began to sink in deeper. There was no doubt in his mind that this was more than just an arrest. It was an attack on who he was and what he represented. But Jamal was nothing if not resilient. He knew the law, and he knew he had rights. He just had to wait for the right moment to assert them. Meanwhile, in another part of the station, Lieutenant Kate Thompson sat at her desk, reviewing paperwork when her phone buzzed. She was a seasoned officer with years of experience under her belt, known for being tough but fair. Unlike many of her colleagues, Kate had a strong sense of justice that went beyond the badge. She had seen the flaws in the system, and while she couldn't change everything, she had always done what she could to treat people with respect. The message on her phone was from Jenkins. "Got someone in holding you might want to take a look at Jamal West." Her eyebrows shot up. Jamal West? The name was instantly familiar, and not in a good way for officers like Riley and Jenkins. She had seen Jamal in action in court, taking down corrupt officials and exposing police misconduct. If he was in their holding cell, something was very wrong. Kate stood up, her boots clicking sharply on the linoleum floor as she made her way to the holding area. When she reached the cell, her eyes locked onto Jamal, sitting there calmly, as if waiting for her. There was no sign of panic, no anger, just patience, like a man who knew the game far too well to be rattled by it. "Mr. West," Kate greeted him, her tone neutral, but with a hint of curiosity. "What brings you here today?" Jamal looked up, meeting her gaze steadily. "I believe that's a question for your officers, Lieutenant." She glanced over at Jenkins, who was standing nearby, trying to look busy but clearly eavesdropping. "Mind telling me what happened?" she asked him, though she already had an idea. Jenkins shifted uncomfortably. "Routine traffic stop. Turns out he's got a warrant." "A warrant?" Kate's voice was sharp now. "For what?" Jenkins hesitated, flipping through his notes. Some old bench warrant. Unpaid fine or something." Kate's eyes narrowed. "Unpaid fine? For a civil rights lawyer with federal credentials?" She didn't need to say more. Jenkins knew he was in trouble. Without another word, Kate pulled out her phone and started digging. It didn't take long for her to find what she was looking for. Jamal West's record was clean, spotless even. There was no warrant, no unpaid fine. This was a mistake, or worse, something deliberate. Kate turned back to Jamal. "Mr. West, I'll get this sorted out. You shouldn't be here." Jamal nodded, his calm demeanor never faltering. "I appreciate that, Lieutenant, but we both know this goes beyond a clerical error." Kate sighed, rubbing her temple. She knew he was right. This wasn't just about a wrongful arrest. It was about the bigger picture. The city's deep-rooted issues with race, power, and justice had reared their ugly head once again. And now, they had picked the wrong man to target. An hour later, Jamal was released from the holding cell, but the damage had already been done. Word spread quickly around the station, and soon the entire department knew what had happened. As Jamal walked out of the building, his mind was already racing ahead to what came next. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Outside the station, the crowd had already gathered. Word of Jamal's arrest had spread through social media, and the community had come together to show their support. Dozens of people were there, holding signs, chanting for justice. When Jamal stepped outside, the crowd erupted in cheers, but he raised his hand for silence. "I appreciate all of you for being here," Jamal began, his voice carrying over the crowd. "But this isn't just about me. This is about all of us. This is about every person who's been wrongfully arrested, every person who's been targeted because of the color of their skin. Today, we send a message, not just to the Clarion Police Department, but to every institution that believes they can abuse their power without consequence." The crowd roared in agreement, but Jamal wasn't finished. "I don't want just an apology," he continued. "I want real change, I want accountability, and I want justice for everyone." Inside, Lieutenant Kate Thompson watched from a window, her mind racing. She knew that the fallout from this was going to be huge. Riley and Jenkins would be suspended, no doubt about that. But beyond that, there would be an investigation into the department, into the practices that had allowed this to happen. And in the end, it would be people like Jamal West who would bring about that change. Chief Harrison, the head of the department, had already ordered a public apology. But even he knew that wouldn't be enough. Jamal wasn't the kind of man to let this go with just a few words of regret. He wanted reforms, and if anyone could push them through, it was Jamal West. Over the next few weeks, the city of Clarion underwent a transformation. Riley and Jenkins were suspended, pending an investigation into their conduct. But the ripple effects didn't stop there. Jamal's case had ignited a fire in the community, sparking conversations about race, justice, and policing that had long been overdue. Jamal himself became a beacon of hope and resilience, delivering speeches at community centers, schools, and city council meetings. His message was clear. The fight for justice wasn't over, but together they could push for real, lasting change. He urged the community to stay engaged, to hold their leaders accountable, and to never stop fighting for equality. In one of his speeches, delivered in front of a crowd of thousands, Jamal spoke from the heart. "We can't change the past, but we can shape the future, and it starts here, with all of us. It starts with standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. It starts with demanding justice, even when the system tells us to stay quiet. We are the change we've been waiting for, and we won't stop until every person in this city, in this country, is treated with the dignity and respect they deserve." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jamal knew that this was just the beginning. And so, the story of Jamal West is not just a tale of one man's fight for justice. It's a story of a community coming together, of people standing up for what's right, and of the power of change. Here on Hopeful Horizon, we believe in the power of hope, in the strength of resilience, and in the possibility of a brighter tomorrow. If this story moved you, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let us know where you're listening from, and remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss an inspiring story from Hopeful Horizon. Until next time, keep believing in the power of change.